Okay, hello everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Being respectful of your time, I know we'll have others join, but just want to thank our presenters for tonight's webinar on myths and facts of the alternate diploma. Of course, this is a very important topic, and we wanted to schedule it during a time where more families could attend. And those that have registered, you have had some great questions come through. And it is our hope, with the partnership of the State Department of Education, Special Education Services, as well as the Oklahoma Disability Law Center, that we would provide the facts, answer those questions as time permits. My name's Aita Stevens. I'm the Executive Director for Sooner Success. We are a statewide program that helps families raising a loved one with special healthcare needs. If you have not connected with our program, please do so. We have team members well positioned all across the state, including our bilingual Spanish team members that are ready to assist you with whether those are educational needs, health, uh, behavioral health, or social needs in your community. So do check us out. I want to get right to our topic, and so that's really a speed share version of our team. And I'm also a blessed parent of four. Our oldest was born with a rare chromosome anomaly. She is now 23. So I know firsthand the importance of now what I would say is going to assist more students like our daughter Mahaya. And Mahaya means teacher, by the way, in the Creek language. My husband is Creek and Wichita, and I myself am Kiowa. And we always say her name is perfect because she has taught us so much, including we know firsthand, we were always planning for Mahaya to access a free and appropriate public education until age 22. And although we really did our best to be well informed, we were quite surprised when our school um, had a different path for her. They wanted her to graduate earlier because she had met credit. So whether you're in a small or a large district, I'm very well aware that now that we have the alternate diploma, it is our hope that we will see consistency, equity across the state, because of course districts interpreted the law previously in varying ways. And so again, I know firsthand as a parent the challenges that we might face when we have a differing um, path. But now, thankfully, we have the alternate diploma for our students that need more support, that are also taking the alternative assessment. And so I really do hope that with this webinar, you will walk away with the facts, as well as we will do our best with the presenter's help to answer any questions. Real quickly, you see on your screen housekeeping. We do have translation Spanish available. You will just need to select under the language that you prefer for Spanish, and we have our team members that are ready to assist you with those translations. We will also do our best again to monitor questions and answers. Any housekeeping, we will do our best to, of course, answer those. And then again, as time permits, our presenters will also try to answer questions that you might have. Going back to our own personal journey. And again, because of time, I'm not going to go into those details, but I just want to really give appreciation to the Oklahoma Disability Law Center that assisted us through that formal process. and you will also hear from them after Sherry Coates. So Sherry, again, with the State Department of Education, she is also a strong advocate and supporter and partner. And we are just so excited, Sherry, that you're going to take time to go over great information and hopefully help answer questions that families and we also had some professionals register for the webinar. So time permitting, I know you and Brian and Janice will hopefully help us get those other questions answered. But without further ado, Sherry, we will turn things over to you and thank you again for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Aida. So I am Sherry Coates. I am the director or the program director for special education services for the state of Oklahoma. My background is I spent 20 years in the classroom teaching students with mild disabilities. I was a director of special education services in a district for 13 years. I retired for 3 days, and then I came to the State Department of Education, and I've been here about 2.5 years now. I spent about 18 months as the technical assistance and professional development person here, or program manager at the State Department. And then in May, I was moved to this position. And so I have a long history with special education, and I am a fierce advocate, and I am happy to share these things with you today. Okay, so here on the second slide, and Aida has my slides, so my guess is she will probably send them out to you so that you will have them. But my email address and my contact information is here on this second slide. And so I have stuff on top of my slides that I can't read it. Okay, so what does the Office of Special Education Services do? So first, we provide guidance to districts and educators, also to families and community members about special education. So if you have a question about what is going on or should be going on in your district or your child's special education services, feel free to give our office a call. And that's one of the things that we do. We provide guidance. Second, we provide technical assistance and professional development to special education teachers and administrators. We provide monitoring and accountability for districts across the state. We assist with dispute resolution between families and school districts. And then the main thing that we are charged with under the Individuals with Disabilities Act is we are charged with the supervision or overseeing the implementation of IDEA in Oklahoma school districts. And so that's kind of the scope of what we do. So IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, it is the federal law that supports special education and related services programming for children with youth and with disability, and children and youth with disabilities. So this whole journey that we have been on regarding the alternate diploma really begins with this concept of FAPE. FAPE is the free and appropriate public education. And basically, under the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, we know that students with disabilities are entitled to this FAPE. Under IDEA, it says students ages 3 through 21 in Oklahoma, that has been interpreted to be 3 through the end of the school year in which they turn 22. So all the way through their 21st birthday up to the day of their 22nd birthday, and then they can finish the school year. That's how Oklahoma interprets it. Different states interpret it different ways, but that's how Oklahoma interprets it. So I want to share with you from the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, districts have an obligation to provide FAPE, but under the law, there are 4 conditions that says that the district's obligation to provide a FAPE ends. And I've highlighted 1 and 4 because those are the 2 that we're going to talk about today. So the district's obligation to provide a FAPE ends when, number 1, the student meets the LEA requirements that apply to all students for a receipt of a standard high school diploma. And I want you to notice the word standard and kind of keep that in the back of your mind because we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So when a student meets the LEA requirements that apply to all students for the receipt of a standard high school diploma, the district's obligation to provide a FAPE ends. So let's look at number 4. It says it will also end at the end of the school year in which the student turns 22 years of age. And this is a whichever comes first kind of circumstance. So those are the 2 reasons that we're going to talk about when a district's obligation to provide FAPE ends. So there's some limitations under the law. This is section 300.102. This comes straight from the IDEA regulations. And it says that there is a limitation to the exception for FAPE for certain ages. And so what I want you to notice are the words that I have highlighted. It says that the term regular high school diploma means the standard high school diploma, which is awarded to the preponderance of students in the state that is fully aligned with state standards. So let's stop and talk about that just a minute. I want you to notice that in the first part of the sentence, they use the word regular high school diploma, and they say that it means standard high school diploma. So those terms are used interchangeably. So if you hear regular diploma or standard diploma, we're talking about the same thing. And it says to be awarded this regular or standard diploma, that it must be fully aligned with state standards. Now go to the next bullet and it says except a regular high school diploma, so a regular or standard diploma, shall not be aligned to the alternate academic achievement standards described in the ESSA. So what I want you to understand is Oklahoma has had 1 diploma. Now, a lot of other states have 4, 5, 6 different kinds of diplomas. Oklahoma has only had 1 kind of diploma. And we have inaccurately, inappropriately been conferring this standard or regular diploma to students who are being taught to these alternate academic achievement standards. And IDEA was last updated in 2004. And so this is not new language. This is 20-year-old language. But we've been doing it wrong in Oklahoma over these years because we have been issuing a standard or a regular diploma even if a student curriculum was aligned to alternate academic achievement standards. So if we cannot issue a standard or a regular diploma to students who have been taught to alternate academic achievement standards, what options do we have under the law? So just a little translation, a regular diploma must be fully aligned with state standards. A regular diploma shall not be aligned with alternate academic achievement standards, and thus students who are taught to alternate standards and assessed by the Oklahoma Alternate Assessment Program, that OAP, that alternate assessment, shall not be given a regular diploma. So what options do we have? Another law that applies to schools, it's a federal law, it's the ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. It has language on a state-defined alternate diploma. And this is what it says in the ESSA. It says it's specifically designated for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. And they're assessed using the alternate assessment aligned to alternate academic achievement standards. So when we're talking about our students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, we have a checklist that the IEP team has to review to determine if the student meets the criteria for this alternate assessment and thus being taught to these alternate academic achievement standards. And we'll talk about that checklist here in a little bit. So also in the language, it says that the state-defined alternate diploma must meet 3 requirements. 1, it's standard-based, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. 2, it's aligned with the state requirements for the regular high school diploma. And 3, it's obtained within the same period for which the state ensures the availability of a free, appropriate public education under IDEA. Also, the state-defined alternate diploma must meet the implied condition of being state-defined. So I want to talk about standards-based. When we are talking about the alternate achievement standards, they are in alignment with the Oklahoma academic standards. And so when we developed the alternate diploma for Oklahoma, they are aligned to the Oklahoma standards. And so we consider this standards-based. They are also aligned with the state requirements for a regular high school diploma. And I have a slide that will look at what the requirements are for graduation with an alternate diploma, and I'll describe how it's aligned with the state requirements for a regular diploma. And then also that it's obtained within the same period of time for which the state ensures the availability of a free and appropriate public education. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's talk about this. How is the state-defined alternate diploma different from a regular diploma? While the alternate diploma is standards-based, because that's required under ESSA, and it's aligned with the state requirements for a regular high school diploma, it is not a regular high school diploma. Second, a state-defined alternate diploma does not terminate a free and appropriate public education. And I'm going to go back a couple slides to this slide right here. Where is it? Sorry, this one. Remember, we said that the obligation ends at 2 distinct times: when they graduate with a standard diploma, or at the end of the school year in which the student turns 22. So it's important to understand the distinction that an alternate diploma is not a standard diploma. A standard diploma ends the obligation to FAPE. An alternate diploma does not. Let me jump back down to where we were. So we have, it does not terminate a free and appropriate public education for students with an IEP. So basically, House Bill 1041 last year expanded graduation opportunities for students with significant cognitive disabilities. Without the alternate diploma, there would be no graduation pathway for our students with significant cognitive disabilities, because we just saw in IDEA that we cannot give them a regular diploma. So if that's all we have, then they get nothing. So understand that it's valuable that there is this alternate diploma. So under the House bill, it defined the coursework that was required for graduation with the state-defined alternate diploma. And that coursework, it mirrors the requirements for a regular diploma. And I have a slide that will look at that a little deeper. It's aligned to the alternate standards, or what we actually call essential elements, which are those alternate standards. But it includes some new career readiness and some life skills courses. So let's talk about this. What are the requirements for earning a state-defined alternate diploma? For language arts, it's 4 units. That's what's required for the regular diploma. Now, the titles of these courses are English 1 alternate, English 2 alternate, English 3 alternate, English 4 alternate. Very much in alignment with what is required for a regular high school diploma. Mathematics, we're requiring 3 units. Again, the courses, instead of being Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry, they're Math Alternate 1, Math Alternate 2, Math Alternate 3. Science, it's required 3 units, just as it is for a regular diploma, 3 units of social studies. It also requires 1 unit of art. That's the same as a regular diploma. It requires 1 unit of computer education or world language. That's the same as a regular diploma. Here's where the difference comes in. We are requiring for the alternate diploma 2 units of career readiness and 2 units of life skills. That's the 2 differences between a regular diploma requirements as far as the units that's required and the alternate diploma. So House Bill 1041 was signed into law by Governor Stitt April 19th, 2023, and it's available for students who are graduating in May of 24. So this May will be the first group of students to be able to earn this alternate diploma. Now, one of the things that we wanted to do, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't any kind of negative implication or penalty, if you will, for our students as we make this transition to the alternate diploma. So if I am a senior in 23-24, and my freshman year, I took English 1, and my sophomore year, I took English 2, and my junior year, I took English 3. And now I'm moving to the alternate diploma, and I'm going to take alternate English 4. We wanted to make sure that they didn't have to go back and retake these, because that would be ridiculous, honestly. And so what we did was we said that the corresponding non-alternate titles, course titles, may be substitute to meet their graduation requirements. So if I took English 1, that counts for my English 1 alternate. If I took English 2, that counts for my English 2 alternate. So we have made these allowances within the bill, within the legislation, that they can substitute these courses. This includes any course that was taught to alternate standards, but has a regular title. But this also includes courses that are taught to Oklahoma academic standards. For example, if the student had art, we don't have alternate standards for art, so the art standards are the same, and the music standards and family and consumer science. So if a student has taken any of these, it still applies toward their credit earning toward that alternate diploma. And additional courses approved by the Oklahoma State Board of Education may also be substituted. And we talked about the requirement for the career readiness and the life skills. And so if any students, the other things that were approved by the State Board of Education, if any student took any courses through a VOTEC or any courses that could be considered a life skill or considered a career readiness, those are allowed for substitution as well. So let's talk about what diploma options do students have excuse me, with significant cognitive disabilities. The main thing that you need to understand is that the IEP team is the one who makes these determinations. There is no pathway that says every student who has an intellectual disability must take the OAP. That is not the case. If the IEP team decides that the student wants a regular diploma or a standard diploma, the IEP team can make that decision, understanding that the student will work toward the regular diploma and enroll in courses teaching the Oklahoma academic standards. So, for example, I could take a mild disability lab class that's taught to Oklahoma academic standards, and that would count. It's not to say that you don't get any special education if you're going to go the pathway of a regular or a standard diploma. But you in this case, in a mild lab setting, it would be taught to Oklahoma standards, but it may not cover all the standards, or it may not go in the entire depth of the standards, but is still Oklahoma standards. And that student will take the ACT test. If the IEP determines this is the route and this is appropriate for a student, even if they have an intellectual disability, then the student will earn the standard diploma. Now, if the IEP team determines that the student requires coursework that's aligned to alternate standards and that they're going to be assessed through the OAP or the alternate assessment, then the student will earn that alternate diploma. So it really is an IEP team decision. No one besides the IEP team makes that decision. Districts don't say you have to do the alternate diploma if you are in the category of intellectual disability. That's not the way that that works. So when is the alternate diploma given? The alternate diploma is conferred when a student completes the required courses for graduation with an alternate diploma. And we would expect that students will be allowed to participate in the graduation ceremony with the other graduates from their cohort. So if I've been in school and I'm going along with my cohort, I'm going to school with a group of students in 9th grade, and we all move to 10th grade together. We all move to 11th grade together. We all move to 12th grade together. That's the cohort. And we would say that a student who's working toward an alternate diploma would be allowed to participate in the graduation ceremony with the other graduates from their cohort. And we would expect that the goal is that the students eligible for the alternate diploma earn their credits at the same rate as their age peers, graduating within 4 years. So there was a practice in some districts so that a student could stay longer, that they would hold them back in 8th grade or 9th grade, or have them repeat in 11th grade or something, so that they didn't get to 12th grade, so that they didn't have to leave at that point. There's no reason for those kinds of manipulations. We would expect that they would finish all of their coursework to complete their alternate diploma in 12th grade with their peers, just like any other student would. There's one important difference though. What happens once the student has earned an alternate diploma? Once the student has earned an alternate diploma, the district's obligation for FAPE does not end. Remember, we talked about those 2 reasons. First reason is if they graduate with a regular diploma. So in the case that we just talked about, the student finished all their coursework and they're going through the graduation ceremony, but they are not getting a standard or a regular diploma. They are getting the alternate diploma. And with an alternate diploma, FAPE does not end. So just because they have walked through graduation and they've earned their alternate diploma, the district's obligation to provide FAPE does not end. And as long as the student has not turned 22 on or before September 1st, the student must be offered continued enrollment to be provided a FAPE. So how that looks is students who continue enrollment will participate in transition services. So I finish with my alternate diploma and I come back the next year. What am I going to do? What am I going to work on? we're going to participate in transition services. And we're going to focus on improving functional and academic achievement to facilitate the movement to those post-school activities at the time that the student reaches the point where at the end of the school year in which they turn 22. So what we told districts is that they should expand their programs to meet their obligation of FAPE and to meet the needs of students ages 18 through the school year in which they turn 22. And districts will offer additional courses beyond that which is required for graduation. Now it changes a little bit because it's not for graduation. We're not looking for courses that are going to be on a transcript. We're looking for courses that are not necessarily going to result in an A, B, or C, but maybe more like a pass or fail, because it's not about earning credits for graduation. It's about expanding transitions skills. And we have developed competencies and a scope and sequence that goes along with the new course titles that will be different than what students have had previously. What we did not want is we did not want students to come back and do the same thing that they've already done. And that's the reason that we went this direction with the additional courses and competencies, scope and sequence, and new course titles. So here's a question for you. Must a student return for a FAPE after earning an alternate diploma? It is the decision of the IEP team, but I want you to understand it's going to rely heavily on the preferences of families and students. If the students will continue enrollment after earning an alternate diploma based on the post-secondary plans and goals of the student. The IEP team, it may determine that a student has adequate post-secondary plans and will not continue enrollment. They don't have to come back. They've earned their alternate diploma. And if it's the preference of the family and the student that they hated school, they never liked it, they don't want to come anymore, there's no requirement that says they must return. The team may determine that the student will continue enrollment for 1 year or more years, or until the student reaches maximum age. And enrollment does not have to be consecutive, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I want to say, when we're talking about students who are going to continue that enrollment, we want them to keep learning new things, and we want them to keep working toward preparation for those post-school activities. So let's be clear. What we're saying is districts must offer a FAPE to all students following a graduation with an alternate diploma. However, students are not required to return following graduation. Do you understand the difference? The district must offer it, but students aren't required. And I want to make sure that you understand that just because they've graduated with an IEP or with an alternate diploma doesn't mean their IEP goes away. They are still a student with a disability. They're still under IDEA, and they still have to have all the paperwork requirements of any other student under IDEA. It's just that they have completed their alternate diploma, but they're still getting that FAPE. And so they should still have an IEP. They should still have a 3-year reevaluation. All of those things are still required. So let's go through some different scenarios. Let's say that these students have earned an alternate diploma at the end of 12th grade, and the IEP team decides. Scenario 1, the student will begin a new LEAF program, a Bridges program, or Opportunity Orange Scholars. So the major universities in Oklahoma have a college program for students with intellectual disabilities. That's these 3 programs. And so let's say that the student has earned their alternate diploma, and the IEP team talks about whether or not the student is going to return. And the family says, you know, the child really wanted to go to college, and they've been accepted to the LEAF program or Opportunity Orange Scholars, and the child is going to go to college. And in this case, the IEP team is going to make a decision that they're not going to return for FAPE. However, if the student changes their mind, a FAPE is still available until the student ages out. So let's say that the student goes to college for 1 year and it is not what they thought it was going to be. They don't like it and they want to go to school, but not at the college. They still have the ability to come back until the end of the school year in which they turn 22. So let's look at scenario 2. The student is going to begin supported employment, but doesn't want to continue school. The IEP team will make a decision that the student will not return for FAPE. However, if the student changes their mind, a FAPE is still available until the student ages out. So in scenario 3, the student will participate in Project Search through their high school. In that case, the student will return for FAPE. I think that is the end of my slides. So, Aida, I do have the questions that people pose. Do you want me to go through those, or do you want to get questions from the group that's here first? What would you like?
Actually, if it's okay, we'd like to go ahead and allow Brian Wilkerson and Janice Morris just to give their brief presentation. And with their help and yours, we will get those questions answered. So
Perfect.
if that's okay, Sherry.
Yes.
Brian and Janice, again, thank you to the Oklahoma Disability Law Center for helping our family. And I don't know that I let the attendees know, Mahia was actually able to return to high school and did graduate at age 22. So again, can't thank you enough. And at this time, we will turn things over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Wilkerson, and give me just 1 second, and I'm going to try to see if I can share my screen. Janice, can you still see me and see?
Yes,
All right.
it's up and I can also see you. You're good.
Perfect. All right. Well, my name is Brian Wilkerson. I appreciate everyone's time tonight, and thank you, Sherry, so much for giving us the state's perspective. I think that was very informative and certainly, I hope, answers a lot of the questions that I've seen, but would like to go into some detail about that as we answer questions later as well. The Oklahoma Disability Law Center is the protection and advocacy firm, or what we call a P&A, for the state of Oklahoma. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we are federally funded, and we don't charge for our services for any of our clients that we work with. We do a large range of legal and advocacy work for any individual residing in the state with a disability that qualifies for our services under our priorities and objectives. But for the purposes of this discussion this evening, we do a lot of work in schools. We have advocates and attorneys that assist families in trying to ensure that their child or their student is receiving FAPE, the free appropriate public education that we talked about earlier in the presentation that Sherry was explaining. We are more than happy to talk with people about what their options are and if they run into problems or just questions in dealing with their child's education at their school. Please feel free to reach out to us. Janice is one of our educational advocates who works all across the state in schools and has a kind of a specialty area of transition services, which is super important for tonight's discussion. But she's worked with families with kids just starting this journey all the way up to kids nearing graduation. Our email address is at the bottom. If any of you have questions after this presentation that you would like some further clarification or answers to, we'll be happy to try to provide those answers. And if anyone who's participating tonight feels that they might need some additional assistance, advocacy, or legal assistance in dealing with their particular child's school in ensuring that they are receiving FAPE, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to discuss that with you as well. I'm sorry that our phone number is not on there, but I'm going to briefly give it to you. So if you have the ability to write this down tonight, take this number down. Our 800 number is 800-880-7755. And again, that number is 800-880-7755. And then just very briefly, wanted to give you, as we heard at the beginning from the presenters, just a little personal perspective. I am the father of 2 adult children who both have disabilities, both of whom had IEPs while they were in school. And so we've been through that personal special education journey from K through 12. One of my adult children lives at home with us and probably will, God willing, for the rest of his life. And one of my children is now, my younger child is now pursuing a college degree. So I think sometimes we try to bring a unique perspective also, not only to the legal and advocacy work, but most of us that work at the center have some sort of connection, lived experience dealing with individuals, living with individuals with disabilities, whether in our immediate families or relatives. So I always like to point that out because I think it is important that we really do care and we do often understand what your experience is, although each experience is unique. I'm going to go to the next slide. These are just some common acronyms. Sherry described many of these to you earlier. I'm not going to go over them, but as we answer questions and as we go through this brief part of the discussion, I think it's important maybe that you have this as a reference, because I know that when I started working here, specifically doing special education work, but just work within the realm of disability law in general, everything is an acronym. Those letters that stand for a larger term or word. And it was very hard to keep up with them. And so when people would be having discussions with me, I used to make lists like this for myself so that I'd be able to reference or understand what they were talking about. So hopefully this is helpful to you as well. I think kind of the important things that we wanted to point out this evening before we get to questions is, as Sherry stated, it's very important to understand that all of these decisions about what your student or what your child is going to be, how they're going to progress through school, are IEP team decisions. And I want to stress the individualized in that, because for each student, it should be looked at what is that particular student's needs. And in looking at those needs, if it appears as if, based upon the parent input and the IEP team as a whole's assessment of the student's progress and abilities, that they need to be on the Oklahoma Alternative Assessment Program, or the OAPS, then that decision still needs to be made by the team as a whole. It is important to point out that once that decision is made, though, that alternative plan, as Sherry described it, is not going to lead to a standard diploma. It's going to lead, now under the new rules and regulations, only to an alternative, the alternate diploma that's been described tonight. And if for whatever reason you don't feel that the alternate diploma is appropriate for your student, you need to be having that discussion with your school's IEP team sooner rather than later. Even if it's a student who has previously, in some of their younger, the lower grades, participated in the OAP, you need to be having a discussion about whether or not that is still appropriate for your student, for your child, and whether or not that's the path or direction that you want them to take. Now, on the other side of that, though, we are very excited about this new opportunity for students with disabilities to be able to earn that recognition of their hard work that they have put in throughout their educational career. So we do believe and really feel strongly that the alternative assessment program and the alternate diploma that can be earned through pursuing that, it's really important, and it's a big step for Oklahoma moving forward. The one thing that I would also want to follow up on and emphasize is that, again, if your student earns the alternate diploma, works that track, they are entitled to continue their education and receive FAPE at the school district that they is their local school district, past their 21st birthday until their 22nd birthday is when that hits in the school year, when they turn 22. But that is a choice, again, that the family and the IEP team need to make. The student does not have to continue until they turn 22. They can also take a break, try other options, whether it's just a break from school, or if they have other post-secondary goals that they want to try to meet and think that they have the supports in place to do that. And then revisit that issue with the school, or revisit that re-enrollment and entitlement to FAPE a year or two later, as long as they haven't reached that age of 22 yet. So again, looking at dealing with it as an individualized education plan, it should be something that each family makes those decisions and has those discussions with the school, with the IEP team as you're moving forward. Because this is an opening of an opportunity for these students who qualify. It's not a requirement that they have to continue to receive the FAPE. And if you have a younger student who is either not already on the OAPS or has participated in OAPS but still has some of their high school career left, you can have that discussion about how you might like the school to consider, and the IEP team to consider changing it to pursuing a regular diploma. We were actually provided some questions, and there are a few that the participants submitted prior to or at the time of registration. There were just a couple that kind of stood out to me. I think we've answered them already, but I wanted to clarify. One of the questions that came in was, can a student take a year off graduating before accessing Transition Academy, as long as they still meet age requirements? And I think, as we've described, the answer to that is absolutely yes. But the part of that question that I find interesting and that I want to emphasize too, at least I would like to suggest at this point, that a student who returns, whether they continue right after receiving the alternate diploma and progressing through graduation ceremonies, whether they choose to come back immediately or they try something else and then choose later that it's appropriate for them to come back before they turn 22, the services that are provided more than likely probably should be geared at their transition services to help put them in a position to benefit moving forward as much as possible when they are after they turn 22, to put them in the best position to have a full and integrated life within the society as they choose. However, I would argue, I would suggest that the services don't have to just be transition based. I think just by the nature of the education that most of these students will receive up to that point, there's going to be a heavy emphasis on transition. But because the IDEA is still in place for these students, because they are entitled to FAPE under that, and they will continue, as Sherry said, to have IEPs, I don't want this, I am concerned slightly that this will become a blueprint for schools to just provide transition services and provide those in a separate setting other than integrated into the regular school day with other non-disabled peers, just as these students should be entitled to prior to receiving either a regular or an alternate diploma. And so I think I would encourage families, when talking with their IEP teams, to look at what those post-graduation with the alternate diploma, what those post-graduation opportunities are going to look like. And to remember that, again, on an individualized basis, your student might still need, even though they don't need to work towards credits to receive for the graduation component of the diploma, they may still need to work on academic skills such as math or language. And if that is a goal with the appropriate supports in place through the IEP, then those are things that should be offered by the school. That is still part of the free appropriate public education, still part of the FAPE. So I would strongly encourage parents to keep that in mind as well. Graduating with the alternate diploma doesn't mean that your child automatically is only entitled to transition services. Again, not to say that transition services aren't important, because at that stage in most of these students' educational careers, there should be a heavy emphasis on the transition, because ultimately at that point, what we are doing is also trying to ensure that they are provided the best supports and services that will put them in a position to be able to move on successfully after high school.
And Brian, the thing that we have said is that it really needs to be focused on improving their functional and their academic achievement. So it's not just that functional piece.
Absolutely. And yes, and we are quite, we encourage that as well. So I thank you for that clarification, Sherry.
Brian, if I could just add the importance of assessment in order to know that transition plan should be individualized. As Brian's saying, if they need some academics, well, then give them some academics. If they need functional skills, then give them functional skills. But the only way you're going to know that is whether or not they've been assessed for where they're at on the continuum of post-secondary employment skills. So that's a big part of it. We haven't done a very good job ever of transition. The thing that I like about this, and let me just add, I'm also the parent of 2 children with disabilities, and having done this for about 30 years, you know, it was very annoying to get to, you know, the school's been telling you for years that they can stay until they're 22, and then all of a sudden when they get ready to turn 18, you have an IEP meeting, they go, oh no, they must graduate. So, and we're talking about kids that are taking the OAP, who clearly has significant disabilities and need some transition skills. So the nice thing about it is it takes that away and it opens up an opportunity for these students to develop some transition skills that will better enable them to work independently and live independently in the community. So I'll get off my soapbox.
We appreciate that perspective. That's why you're here, Janice. Thank you.
Yes, and Brian, just to add to that, if a parent does approach a school and is requesting, let's say they leave to pursue post-secondary, because thankfully Oklahoma now, we do have 4 programs specifically for students with intellectual developmental disabilities. And as you said, as long as they have not reached 22, they return to the school and the school says, oh, we don't have those services here, or they've already received their alternate diploma. So either Brian or Sherry, if the parent approaches the school and they say they don't have that, what do you recommend in the best way to move forward?
I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can start answering the questions a little bit more fully, if that's okay. I hope everyone had an opportunity. I do want to hear Sherry's perspective. I'll take the first crack. The short version is, please contact our office, and we'd be happy to talk with you through that. We can either provide you with advocacy skills and information so you can continue to support your student and make those appropriate requests. We can also get directly involved if we believe that it's something that would require our assistance. So please contact us for that. And then I'll turn it over to Sherry.
So from our perspective, I had on my very first slide that we reviewed that the State Department of Education, the state education agency, is responsible for the implementation and the supervision of the implementation of IDEA. And one of the things that our office does regularly is provide guidance and technical assistance to districts. And so if I were to take a phone call from a parent that gave that scenario that Brian described, I would say, let me get a hold of the district. And I would tell the district what their requirements are, and that I would ask them to call the parent and make arrangements for the parent to get those services. That's part of what we do.
Right.
That's part of that dispute resolution that we were talking about. And because the SEA has general supervision, and it's in the IDEA that the SEA, the State Education Agency, is responsible for the supervision of the local school districts. We have the authority to do that.
That's great. And I know we have a long list of questions and we are approaching 7, but if there were any specific questions that either of you wanted to try to answer, I know we could also look at a follow-up email. We can try to answer those that we don't get to. But in terms of answering any additional questions live, of course, we have some that are in the Q&A feature, as well as some that you have received from registration. So
I'd like to take a stab at that second question that asks, our schools is using House Bill 1041 as a reason to require our elementary child to take the OAP and be on an alternate curriculum. Does the bill actually do this? So what I want to make sure that we understand is these are IEP team decisions. If you'll remember, I had that slide that had that graph there. And it's about determining what the student needs. We don't jump straight to the alternate diploma. We talk about what kind of instruction does the student need? Can the student be taught to Oklahoma academic standards, or do they require those coursework that's aligned to the alternate standards? And there is that question that I'm going to pull up my questions just so I have it. There is a checklist that IEP teams must determine if the student is even eligible for the alternate assessment. The first one, does the student have a significant cognitive disability? And that is defined as 2 standard deviations. They have to have a 70 IQ or below. That's the first question. The second question, does the student have significant adaptive behavior deficits? Again, 70 or below. Then, does the team feel that extensive family or community supports will be a lifelong requirement, regardless of modifications, accommodations, or adaptations implemented in the student's program? Does the student require intensive, extensive, direct instruction in multiple settings to acquire, maintain, generalize, and demonstrate knowledge of skills? That's what the team has to look at and to make this determination of if the student is eligible for the alternate assessment. And if they're not eligible for the alternate assessment, they're not eligible for alternate standards, and they're not eligible for the alternate diploma. So it's not about the diploma driving it. It's about eligibility for participation that drives it. Does that make sense?
yes, I think that's very clear, and thank you for clarifying that. Were there any other questions that stood out to you all?
I want to
know-
just
Go
address
ahead,
one
Ryan.
quickly. I know we're right at the end, but we had one early in the registration process that is sort of like the second or third question that we got tonight. And sorry we didn't get to more, but does earning an alternate diploma mean a student has to be on an alternate curriculum in the SPED room? That's a kind of a 2-part answer. It does mean that they have to be on the alternate curriculum. That's by definition of taking the OAPs and earning the alternate diploma. The curriculum would be adjusted to those alternate standards. However, as we spoke about earlier with regard to IEPs, whether it's before graduation or after the continued entitlement to FAPE, even after graduating with an alternate diploma, I would encourage people to be looking very closely at whether or not their student can continue to be or should be integrated into a mainstream classroom with appropriate supports or a mixture of general ed classrooms with lab support or whatever it might be. But no, I would argue pretty strongly that it does not mean that they have to be taking that alternate curriculum in a SPED classroom. Each individual student will have different abilities to function within different settings, and that should be considered by the family and the IEP team.
I do want to just make one more comment before we close, and I know we're right at the time, but someone asked about what are we doing to ensure that districts are providing quality transition training. One of the things that we did almost immediately when this alternate diploma came up is we hired an additional staff person. And this staff person is Claudia Beckner, and she has significant experience in transition. And she has made herself available to districts to help them develop their transition programs. And the other great news is through the Office of Rehabilitation Services at the U.S. Department of Ed, we won a $10 million grant to assist with transition. And along with that comes an additional 3 employees that will be working with our team and with districts to help build transition. And certainly that will include our 18 to 21, but it's not exclusive to that. It's all of our students who are working toward transition.
That is great. I'm learning about some innovative approaches that are really going to help a lot of students. And I'm glad to hear that you all have that support as well to offer the districts. Well, and I know we need to go, but lastly, because I feel like it relates to maybe everyone on here would want to know if the student receives the alternate diploma, they then move. Is it the district that they reside in that then would provide FAPE?
Yes. Just like they would if they were in the 9th grade or the 10th grade. It'll be the same.
Great. Well, we can't thank you all enough. This has been very informative. Attendees do look for an email that will have the presentation slides. And we will also get with our presenters to see if we can get the additional questions answered. And we hope that this has been informative. I know from working with other families as well, you all addressed a lot of questions that we get. And so thank you, presenters, and thank you to our team. And really thank you everyone for being here. And we just we'll look for your evaluation. We are asking, of course, if this is helpful, but if there are additional topics that you would like us to focus on, we welcome that feedback. So thank you, everyone.